Now that businesses across the US are beginning to return to relative normalcy, they aren't faced with lockdowns or maybe panic buying. Attention can maybe once again focus on proactively improving operations and customer service. So it makes sense that demand planning, dealing with late shipments, and omni-channel fulfillment are high on the list of concerns for retailers moving forward. So looking, to the future, what are the one or maybe two most important supply chain challenges organizations will be facing?
Yeah. So right now, I would say it goes back to supply and demand.
Yeah.
If I start with the demand side, because that typically dictates supply, is what's that going to look like, right? We see a very strong economy still, right? One
Mhm.
of the good examples that we saw is when you think of January, typically after Christmas and New Year's, most retail supply chains dip in January, and so do suppliers, right? Volume goes down. They're able to focus on continuous improvement, all these different things. And what we saw is actually demand stayed steady from the holidays through January. And that put the carrier market in a huge crunch from a pricing perspective. And so the big question mark is what's demand going to look like next month, 6 months from now, and a year from now? And the way that demand is shaping up is very different than it historically was, right? When I think of 20 years ago, retail was heavily full truckload to my store operation where I leverage my private fleet. But now we think of e-commerce, right? We think of the amount of goods that are imported via ocean and the disruptions in that market. And so, first off, it's how's demand going to impact us post COVID
Yeah.
is number one. Two, I would say, is how do I deal with these disruptions and bottlenecks, right? We know that deviations are going to happen. We know that late shipments are going to happen, but how do I mitigate that risk and forecast as much ahead of time so it does not impact my store level availability, right? When you think of these key
Yeah.
metrics, is that if you or I were a consumer going into a store, what we care about is that it's there when I need it. I don't necessarily care if they have it in the warehouse, right? Because if it's not the store, it doesn't help me. And so understanding the impact of late shipments will also be another key factor within that area.
Great. What about fulfillment and customer experience? Are those a close, maybe third and fourth?
Absolutely. Omni-channel and just overall order fulfillment is a key focus area. And we've seen many retail supply chains evolve from a typical distribution model to now where I can source from my store locations, whether it's my e-commerce orders or to back to my DCs. And so many companies have invested in technology there. I think many retail operations are still going through that transformation of how to most effectively operate in this era of omni-channel fulfillment. On customer experience side, I think one can argue, that's tied to number one around the demand side, right?
Mhm.
But when you think of the retailer, even for us from a family standpoint, is that brand reputation and brand consistency is so important, right? If I have a negative shopping experience, it may impact my loyalty. And so, yes, I would say improving customer experience is top of that list. But there's also a strong connection to that demand angle
Mhm.
that's there. And one of the other things that comes up oftentimes is how about digitization, right?
Yep.
How do I change the way I'm operating today versus tomorrow, right? How do I compete with other leaders in my space that may be taking a non-traditional way to that customer experience or their supply chain operation?
Absolutely. And all five of those are really, really important. I'm having a lot of discussions around how do we forecast? How long is this going to be around, all of these disruptions, and how long is it going to be until we can get back to quote unquote normal? And a lot of that is tied to the demand and the forecasting that you were talking about.